Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 83 with Roll and Julie Piatt. Some of my favorite parts of this episode were when they share their best relationship tools with us and how they set healthy boundaries and why working on yourself is imperative for your relationship. Plus, I also love how they talk about how there is freedom in commitment. But there is so much more wisdom and inspiration that you get in the full episode. So, to listen to the full podcast and to get all the info in the show notes, head to melissaambrosini.com/83 right now. Rich and Julie, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have this conversation with you today. Can you tell us about your love story? Take us back to where your love story began and how you got together.
Julie and I met in a yoga class in West Los Angeles. I was fresh out of rehab at the time. I think I had, 4-6 months of sobriety or something like that at this point. And I started going to this yoga class as part of my recovery and also to reconfigure my social life because I was so used to partying and being in bars and I needed a new environment. And I stumbled upon this yoga class that was the highest concentration of beautiful women I'd ever seen in my life, certainly better than any nightclub I'd ever been in. And I thought, this is my new home. And Julie was practicing yoga there at the time. And I don't know, from the moment I saw her, I had this knowing, not like an inkling, but like a knowing that like I was going to be with her. And it took a little while, but
there were some complications.
Yeah,
I was married to somebody else.
Yeah, there was some other things going on.
I was not available actually, and had no idea Rich existed.
And I also had taken a 1-year vow of celibacy for my first year of sobriety. So even though I was in this class and had my eye on Julie, I wasn't dating at the time. So we got to know each other a little bit, and it took a little while before we ended up, connecting. But that was the genesis of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how many years ago was this?
99, I think, 19 years ago.
19 years ago.
I talk a lot about the importance of understanding the divine masculine and the divine feminine energies that we all have and which play out in our relationships. So how does this show up for you guys? And having that understanding of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, how has that played out in your relationship?
This is Julie's favorite subject.
Mine too.
We talk for hours about this.
Well, I mean, it's funny. It's interesting in our relationship because Rich and I we're in a relationship of sort of polarity integration where we are two completely differently oriented individuals that just are opposite in most ways. And it's that opposition that creates the friction that creates the amazing, love, this deep, deep, deep bond. I think that I'm very conscious of those concepts that you just presented, where Rich is not. I don't think that he's thinking about the divine feminine within our relationship, but I would say that he has sort of like an innate sense of how to receive me in that way, either while we're in intimate relationship or even publicly. He does honor me as a divine feminine, but we don't really have the dialogue about it.
I'm curious to know, how has, for you, Rich, being a step parent, because Julie obviously had the 2 beautiful boys and you came into that, how has that been for you?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I mean, like I said, when I first connected with Julie, the idea that I would also step into some form of a parenting role was something that I would have never planned for myself or contemplated. And I certainly didn't feel adequately prepared for it at the time. But when Julie and I, really began taking our relationship seriously, the boys were like 3 and 4 years old at the time. And their dad, Julie's ex-husband, was a great dad. I mean, he was very present in their lives. And and very involved. And Julie's split with Lou was very conscious. And so I didn't feel like I had to, not only did I feel like I didn't have to, sort of replace their father, it was inappropriate for me to develop that kind of relationship with them. So I was always very conscious of the fact that they have their dad and that's their dad and I'm not their dad. And I'm there to support them and to be, a guiding force to the extent that, I could, without trying to step across that boundary or that line. And so I sort of looked at myself more as maybe more like an uncle. But then their father passed away several years ago, and things sort of changed after that. And they were much older at the time. But then, it became a situation of having to shoulder a little bit more of that responsibility and trying to figure out where I fit, because still, it's not for me to be their dad and to fill the void that was lost when he passed away, but to try to figure out a way to be able to be there for them in a more comprehensive way than I was prior to that. And now they're 23 and 22 years old. They just moved out and got their own place. So they're fully formed young men at this point.
Yeah. And if I can add, so one thing that was genius for me with Rich, and again, it was just something that was a perfect match for us, is, as I said before, I'm a devoted mother. If I'm anything, I'm a mother first. So there was no question to me. I had no interest in introducing my boys to any string of men that I was considering to have a relationship with. So I just simply didn't allow, anybody that I was dating to see them. And then the beautiful thing with Rich is that he understood that and was okay with that from a very early on in our relationship.
So guys, let's get super practical now. You both live and work together, and hands down, I think anyone that can do that is amazing. And my husband and I are the same. We live and work together. So how do you guys make it happen? Can you give us your top 5 best tips on how to live and work together and coexist in the one space?
First of all, our sort of rule book for that might look different from yours because Julie and I are so opposite. Our work habits are very different. Like the way that I work, the way that I approach my work is very different than the way Julie approaches her work. And we do collaborate on many things, but we also do things separately. And so you have to find your own language with that and where those boundaries lie about what works for you. And I think we've developed a mutual respect for each other's respective habits. And by that, I mean, I'm not trying to get Julie to do her work the way that I do my work, and she's not trying to get me to change how I do it to fit her modus operandi. And it took us some time to figure that out about each other. So I think, rule number 1 for us, and I don't know if this is applicable to anybody else, is to have a mutual respect for how the other person functions, at their core. And I think that perhaps goes back to your original question about the divine feminine and the divine masculine. I think built into those two archetypes are different perspectives and prisms through which, we each perceive the world and the relationship that we have with our work and what that looks like. So, I don't sit next to Julie at a table all day and collaborate. Like I have my own workspace and I retreat into that. And that's how I function best, sort of by myself in isolation. Julie's much more of a collaborator. I'll come into the kitchen and she has Leah who works with us, working with her, or maybe there's a couple people here and she's in her flow, and it's a much more communal and sort of verbal, physical experience than what I do, which is kind of sit with myself, I guess you would say. So I think rule number 1, that would be just knowing, first of all, having a core understanding of how each of you functions and having a respect for that, and then developing a language to communicate around those habits so that you can find a functional way to collaborate so that when you do come together and when you are together, you're creating that spark that produces something that's greater than the sum of your two parts.
Yeah. And I would also say, if I can just add, Melissa, to that, would be, maybe I only have one tip for working together, and that would be to understand that every single answer to every single question, or every single answer to every dream or desire or need to express, everything is within your own heart.
So, if there's one thing that challenges you most about within your relationship, what is it? And how do you guys move through it with as much ease and grace as possible?
I think, again, it's a different cadence of being. Rich and I are so extreme that it comes right down to things like, he likes super freezing temperatures when he sleeps, and I like to be warm. He doesn't like to talk at certain times of the day. Like, you can't speak to him or he will freak out. There's just, I was always a cuddler. He doesn't like to be touched. So there's some interesting things that go along with being an Ultraman, and just the extremity and everything that Rich has in his personality, which makes him so amazing and able to do these amazing things. And I would say that the fact that he is in a recovery program, he's been in recovery for many years, that this has given him an amazing toolbox for conflict resolution, and as well as, my spiritual practices. And luckily and amazingly, we have an amazing ability to resolve conflict. And it doesn't mean that we don't get upset or we don't have this friction or this, kind of, irritation between us or whatever. But we have an ability to communicate very honestly and very authentically and very openly. And somehow we're able to resolve that and transform it in this time span of a pretty short time period.
Yeah, I think, we have conflict and we fight and we get on each other's nerves, just like any two people would who cohabitate. And we've been living together for almost 20 years. So that happens. So it's not about like, how do we live in this blissful state where we're never having disagreements? I think disagreements are healthy. If you're not having disagreements, you're probably not being honest or forthright. But when emotions get the best of us and the volume gets turned up, or there's some intensity to some conflict that we have, we are able to communicate our way through it. And the half-life of, the residue of that wears off very quickly. So I can't remember the last time where I stewed for, more than a half an hour after any kind of conflict that we had. We get over it quickly.
Yeah, we get in it. We get really real. We get in it, and we go full on, and then it's gone. We experience this immense freedom in commitment. And the freedom and commitment comes with this, this foundational alliance that we have between each other that we feel very, very deeply. And that's a big asset as well, to be able to give that to your partner and make that commitment that I'm going to stand here even when I don't like your behavior, or I'm going to stand here even when you say something that, that I wish you wouldn't have said. That is powerful conflict resolution and is essential to a long-term, deep, spiritual, intimate relationship.
How do you guys keep, you've been together for almost 20 years. How do you keep injecting freshness or excitement into your relationship?
Well, Julie just dyed her hair blonde. So that's one thing.
That was not for that reason, though. No. One thing that's amazing with Rich and me, and I think it's just another one of those things of why we're so great together, is that we are very intimately matched in a beautiful way. And when we enter into intimacy together, it's never the same. It's completely like a new creative dance that goes one direction. And it's really amazing. I mean, I think that's amazing because I've been married 3 times. And And so I know what it's like to be in long-term relationships that maybe aren't as well matched intimately, but I'm super blown away just repeatedly on how every time I'm with Rich, I feel like I was just had a romantic liaison with my boyfriend. Like it always feels like that to me.
I'm going to need that audio clip and I'm going to save it. If you're always growing, if you're always pushing yourself to expand, in your own personal life, and you apply that to your relationship, then you have the ability to avoid those plateaus, or you have a better shot at pushing through those plateaus. I think when you get sort of self-satisfied in your life and you put on cruise control and you think everything's chill and now you can just relax, you are buying into an illusion, because there is no stasis. You're either moving backwards away from growth, regressing, or you're growing and expanding. And I think that's true in business, it's true in sobriety, it's true in career, and it's certainly true in relationships. So I think as human beings, we want to think like everything's cool, like it's always going to be this way, and I can just take a breath. And honestly, you can't. Like every action you take, every exchange you have with your partner, every thought you entertain, and behavior that you engage with is either moving you to become a better person or is moving you away from that idealized version of yourself that you aspire to inhabit. And I think the more mindful you can be of that, the better place you will find yourself in terms of how you relate to your partner, and the kind of dynamic of the relationship that you're in will be benefited by that.
What does soulful sex mean for you guys?
Soulful sex is sex that is experienced with your beloved, with all of your being, with all of your physical self, all of your heart, all of your mind, all of your spirit, all of your presence, that is free from pornography, toys, and distraction, fantasy, any of that. It is about being fully, fully present with that person and entering into this sort of spontaneous dance that is really an offering of your recognition of that being as an emanation of this beautiful force of divinity. So we all are these instruments of divinity that are expressing through us. And if we can shift the lens to really understand that each one of us, and that's every single one of us, is expressing this divinity, and that is the origin. And to have your beloved view you from that lens literally elevates the entire experience to something that I call sacred sex. And I think that as couples and as lovers and as humans, we are going to rewrite the way that we interact with each other sexually, because sexuality is the same energy as creativity, and it's the same energy as spirituality. And this is a powerful force that can be used to heal, to transform, to elevate, to manifest, and to express more and more love and connect us with our divinity.
What do you guys attribute your relationship success to?
Communication is huge. Trust is huge. The sense of security that you're with somebody who, and that it's safe to be who you are, that you are respected for who you are, that you're not in a situation with somebody who is trying to get you to be somebody else.
What's something that's bringing you each the most joy right now in your life?
Well, I would say what's bringing me the most joy in my life right now is that I have come to a point of integration in my being, where I finally feel that I'm home. That's the best word that I can use to express this emotion. But I've always had a certain level of tension, of striving, or I would say before, when I was in my early 20s, I would call it ambition, which was, well-intentioned ambition. Then we went through a financial collapse and went through our spiritual dark night for 9 years. And then I was alchemized into another level of sort of service in a way. Authentic service is where Rich and I arrived. And that's been the last, 9 years or so. And now, I don't know, I just feel like I had this moment where I've expressed myself in enough mediums, and I've stepped into my spiritual gifts without edit. And I'm feeling this amazing integration that has just come in really just since January. And I finally feel as if there's nothing that I need outside of myself.
I could talk about things that I'm personally working on that I'm excited about, but I think more than that, I'm excited about being witness to some pretty massive culture shifts right now. When I began this journey, that I've been on and that Julie and I have been on, the world was very different. And now it's sort of like, at least as far as like the kind of mainstreaming of awareness with things like about plant-based nutrition and being a plant-based athlete and meditation and mindfulness and conscious awareness around food choice and environmental preservation. Like, these are the subjects of the day.
What is one thing that you're currently working on or would like to improve within yourself at the moment?
I'm working on, and but if somebody listens to this and they know me, they may find this to be surprising. But I think that there's always an opportunity to be more and more and more authentic. There are gifts and talents and power that I have from past lifetimes, multiple lifetimes, that I'm now threading in, and it's kind of, it's super exciting to be on sort of the precipice of really embodying all of me, all of my energy. And, as Rich shared, to be in the relationship without edit, without conformity. And, while I have a lot of freedom in my life, there's always levels of conformity that are there. There's always some boundary or some body that you've grown into, right? But then you grow out of, and then you move into the next form. So yeah, I think I have more growing to do in my ability to communicate universally, multiversally, and to really embody the divinity that is my song, that is my offering, which will come through voice. I'm working on some new music, some new vocal tonings. My sitar playing is coming into, a good form, a fine form. So yeah, I'm really excited to integrate all of that into my being in a way that I haven't in my life as of yet.
I'm just, spilling over with character defects. So, there's no shortage of things that I need to work on. I could go on and on and on about the pitfalls of my character. But I think the biggest, thing that I need to master this year that has caused me tumult and handicapped me is really getting intentional and focused around the boundaries that need to be erected to create deep work. Because it's very easy to get caught up in what needs to happen today. And as somebody who hosts a podcast, okay, I have to prepare for this show. And then when am I going to post this on Instagram about that? And when am I going to edit this? And, there are all the many things that go into producing the show that I do, and the other kind of ancillary promotional activities around that could consume me, for the week. But in order to really express at the highest level that I'm capable of, I need to make choices around what's most important.